So those would be cars potentially you could see racing in the domestic and European GT championships. Group GTC is for current and later challenge cars, the likes of Lamborghini Super Trofeos and Ferrari Challenge Europe cars, but they have to be more recent cars because if they're slightly older than 5 years, they will sit in Group GTB. Group GTH, the most popular class we have so far this season, is for homologated GT cars that run to GT4 specification. So again, you would see those in other domestic and European GT championships. And the final group is Group GTA. They are for lower specification challenge cars and will make Series GT cars, the likes of cars from the Ginetta Super Cup. Well, the championship for 2022 started at Donington Park. We moved to Brands Hatch this weekend, and next time up, we'll be heading to Norfolk and Snetterton on the 300 circuit. After that, we head to Alton Park for a single-day race meeting in the early part of July. Then it's on to Silverstone on the Grand Prix circuit later on that month. Donington Park hosts the penultimate rounds of the season, and our championship finale will be back to Snetterton in the early part of October. Well, Brands Hatch is ideally located just outside of London in Kent, and it always draws, therefore, a very, very large crowd. It's a circuit that has also seen motor racing activity for a good period of time. It was first ever used in 1926. However, the Grand Prix loop was added later on. It's split into 3 sectors, and in terms of corners, well, there are 9 major corners on this track. Back to the sectors. Sector 1 brings the cars over the start-finish line, round through Druids and out past Surtees. Sector 2, it's the fast, daunting Grand Prix section of it that brings them up towards Dingledale. And then the final sector, back to the start-finish line. Certainly a challenging track. The drivers, however, absolutely love it. Well, if you weren't with us earlier on today for round 5 at Brands Hatch, first of all, why not? Second of all, let's look back at some of the highlights, making it 5 different winners from the first 5 races. It was a strange start for round 5 of the championship, our first sprint race. Contact on one of the formation laps between Graham Tilley's Mercedes and one of the Top Cats racing with Hex Lamborghinis caused damage to both vehicles, so the safety car stayed out for an extra lap to ensure everything was safe. When the race got fully underway, Morgan Tilbrook led the charge from Ian Loggy and Steve Burgess at the wheel of the Radical. However, for Jason Garrett in the Petrolhead Motorsport BMW E46, off and into the gravel at Druids. Morgan Tilbrook would pick up the lead of the race, but the extra pace of the Group GTO Radical would see Steve Burgess get the overall lead, whilst for the lead of Group GTH, there was a great fight going on between the Beluga Motorsport number 50 Porsche and Callum Jenkins at the wheel of the Team Hard Ginetta. Steve Burgess, the race leader, made a mistake at the wheel of the Radical, which allowed Morgan Tilbrook to retake the lead, and there was contact up at Paddock Hill Bend between one of the Make Happen Mercedes and Phil Carter's McLaren. He was off backwards into the gravel. Steve Burgess would continue to lead, only just though, but with the McLaren stricken in the gravel trap, out would come the safety car, and thankfully for Steve Burgess, he just managed to get a couple of back markers between himself and the rest of the pack. The race would get back underway, and Morgan Tilbrook had to get on it. He'd got Simon Orange at the wheel of the Orange Racing powered by JMH McLaren right on his tailpipes when the race got back underway. And there was also a great fight going on between Ian Campbell and the light green Mercedes of Mike Price. Trouble through the back markers. Rob Trenker couldn't get out of the way. Callum Jenkins almost lost the lead at the wheel of the Group GTH Ginetta, but then a trip into the gravel trap at Paddock Hill Bend would see him lose the group lead. The checkered flag, though, would fly. Steve Burgess would claim the win and make it 5 different race winners out of the first 5 races in 2022. So that was the highlights from earlier on today, the sprint race. The cars are already on their formation lap, the first of 2 formation laps ahead of this first 50-minute sprint race. So let's guide you then through the grid and the way they are going to line up for what will be round 6 of the championship here at Brands Hatch in what are pretty much perfect racing conditions. So the grid then lines up as follows. So drivers on the left will be the starting drivers. It's Simon Orange alongside Morgan Tilbrook in row number 1. And it's Ben Dimmock and Ian Loggy who are there on row number 2. Row 3 sees Ian Campbell line up alongside the next to the cars, which is going to be Michael Price. And when we get to row number 4, that will be Paul Bailey on the Brabham that should sit on the inside of that fourth row of the grid. Alongside him is Lucky Kira at the wheel of the Group GTC leading Ferrari. Row 5 of the grid, on the inside of the fifth row of the grid, it's John Dillon and his Lamborghini and Graham Tilley at the wheel of the Texurf Mercedes. And row number 6 of the grid, on the inside of that 6th row of the grid, it is going to be Charlotte Birch, who should line up on the inside of the 6th row of the grid alongside James Webb. Warren Gilbert and Tom Barrow on the next row of the grid. Apologies, there might be an issue with the graphics. Row 8 of the grid is Callum Jenkins, who's got James Wallace in company, with row 9 being Sam Alpast and Matthew Graham, and row 10 being Adrian Watts and Patrick Collins. The 11th row of the grid is Tamer Shahan and Tim Docker. Row 12 is Roy Millington and Alex Stevenson, with row 13 being Mark Hopton and Tim Creswick. The 14th row of the grid is Kaveh Junder and John Curry. The penultimate row, row 15, is Phil Carter and Stephen Walton. And the 16th and final row of the grid is Ron Trenker and Jason Garrett. So that gives you the grid, it gives you the starting drivers. This is the pit stop race, which means there is a mandatory pit stop and all of the cars have to come into the pits during it. Now, it's a split window in reality, so if you're in Group GTO, Group GT3 or Group GTC, you pit today between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race, i.e. when there's between 26 and 21 minutes remaining on the top of the screen. If you're in Group GTB or Group GTH, for today, you pit between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race, i.e. when there's between 21 and 15 minutes remaining on that clock at the top of the screen. And you have to remain stationary for 60 minutes if you're a sporting combination. If you're a sporting driver but have a pro sporting with you, a semi-pro, it's 70 seconds. If you are a pro driver that is sharing the car with a sporting driver, you have to remain stationary for 75 seconds, plus any success seconds you've picked up, and they come from whether either you're a new entrant for this weekend, and there's a few cars that are, or whether last time out at Donington Park in the second pit stop race, if you won your group, you pick up an extra 20 seconds. If you're second, it's an extra 15. If you're third, it's an extra 10. Sounds complicated, but in reality, the car on pole position has to remain stationary for 85 seconds. The car that's alongside it, Morgan Tilbrook, when he gives way to Marcus Clutton, that remains stationary for 10 seconds less, for 75 seconds. And on the second row of the grid, the Radical of Ben Dimmock stationary for 80 seconds. Ian Lockie alongside the dark blue and pink Mercedes, only 60 seconds. He will have to remain stationary, so he's shuffling in the order, which means that no one single car or driver combination is going to dominate over the course of the season. Now, I was expecting them to be in 2x2 order. Morgan Tilbrook now gets himself alongside the car of Simon Orange. So the dark blue car is Simon Orange on pole position. Morgan Tilbrook sits alongside. It's the white Radical of Ben Dimmock alongside the dark blue and pink Mercedes of Ian Lockie. We're about to get round 6 of the 2022 GT Cup Championship underway here at Brands Hatch. Red lights go out and the pack charges its way up towards Paddock Hill Bend for the first time. Mike Price in the light green Mercedes, slightly slower away initially, which almost allowed Lucky Kira's black Ferrari to draw himself alongside. It is Simon Orange that leads the way. It is Ben Dimmock who is already up into second position at the wheel of the Group GTO Radical and is splitting the McLarens at the sharp end of the field as they descend downhill and in towards the great braking area for Graham Hill Bend, a 50-minute race. The clock started to tick when they started their second formation lap, so they charged their way along the Cooper Straight and up towards Surtees for the first time. Everybody, by the look of things, safely at least through the first 2 or 3 corners on this fantastic Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. Now out at Surtees, speeds begin to build. We know this Radical is quick in a straight line. Look at him as Ben Dimmock draws himself alongside Simon Orange, but he's not going to try anything on the first lap on what are still coldish tyres to try and take the lead of the race. That compromises his run coming out of the corner though, but he is managing to, at the moment, keep Morgan Tilbrook behind. So it's Orange Racing, powered by JMH, Simon Orange, that leads the way. It's the Raw Motorsport prepared Radical in second place, then Enduro Motorsport there in third position, as they all work their way through Dingledale, through Sheen, Curve, and up towards the left-hander at Surtees. There's the glorious Brabham BT62 in the hands of Paul Bailey. It's been hugely successful in GT Cup over the years. It's been away and raced in other championships. It's good to see the Brabham back. Now this is up towards Hawthorne, and this is a replay, and that was contact, I'm afraid to say. Thankfully, barriers were avoided, but that was going to be Patrick Collins that was tagged into a spin there, I think, by Tim Docker's McLaren. The Fox Motorsport McLaren just getting into the back of the Orange Racing powered by JMH machine. So the rest of the field all filing their way through that fantastic roller coaster ride as they come downhill through Paddock Hill Bend and start to climb back uphill in towards the braking area for the Druids hairpin. Group GTB, Tom Saxon Saxon Motorsport, sorry, Tom Barrow BMW, under pressure from Sam Olpas that sits behind. That's a squabble that is well worth watching at the moment. The two Beamers in a straight line. The Jeff Steele Racing prepared car of Sam Olpas can't quite squeeze his way through and ahead of Tom Barrow's Saxon Motorsport machine. So stuck himself back behind Sam Olpas as he got a bit more grunt in the rear-engined BMW. He draws himself alongside the V10-engined 1 Series. He's just about got his nose ahead, has he? Yeah, but he's going to bring it all the way around the outside at Hawthorn. That's hugely, hugely brave and very trusting of both drivers. And Sam Olpas has made that stick as well right away round the outside at Hawthorn to pick up what should be the lead of Group GTB again. So those two are fighting away for the lead of the group. Fantastic stuff between the pair of them. Bottled up behind one of the two Top Cats Racing Lamborghinis, Charlotte Birch that will be, but back to the leaders, the lead 6 having broken away at this stage. 7th place is John Dillon in the Scott Sport prepared Lamborghini. At the end of the first 3 laps, it's McLaren from Radical back to Group GTB, and it really is hotting up, isn't it? Sam Olpas now trying to squeeze his way through and past Charlotte Birch at the wheel of that Lamborghini. Comes from a long way back, has the inside line, needs to be careful of the bump at pit lane exit, draws himself up the inside of the Lamborghini, but then leaves the door open slightly to Tom Barrow. I don't think he's able to capitalise this time, so no, the lead battle for Group GTB still together. The two Beamers are pretty much inseparable, and right behind them as well is the Group GTH Ginetta in the hands of Callum Jenkins. That car will be lying, I think, 3rd in Group GTH the way things currently stand. So, Ben Dimmock still looking to see what he might be able to do. He is falling away to a degree from Simon Orange, who is just disappearing up the road. And dropping into the clutches of Shane Moore. And that is Sam Olpas, I'm afraid. That was the lead battle of Group GTB. So, whether something happened between the two BMWs, or whether Sam was a bit keen on the throttle coming out of the corner. Let's just have a quick look replay. Yeah, just lost it under braking by the look of things. Maybe turned in on the brakes. Callum Jenkins has to take to the gravel trap in the Ginetta in avoidance, but that now puts Tom Barrow in the Saxon Motorsport 1 Series up into the lead of the group. Over the start-finish line, there goes John Dillon. This is now the fight between Lucky Kira and Paul Bailey. Lucky Kira leading Group GTC. Paul Bailey's Brabham BT 62 runs in Group GTO, as does that white Radical that's at the front end of this little queue of cars at the moment. GT3 spec cars queuing up behind him. Morgan Tilbrook's car, then the McLaren of Ian Campbell, and then the two Mercedes, Ian Loggy, being hounded by Mike Price, who I've got to say has been really impressive this weekend. Mike Price at the wheel of the second of the two Ram Racing Mercs. That's the light green one towards the tail end of the field. So underneath the bridge, down through Pilgrim's Drop, and then up towards the daunting right-hander at Hawthorn. 40 minutes remain. Remember, the pit window doesn't open just as yet. It's going to be a while yet before we see that pit window open. The best part of at least, what, 16, 17 minutes away before it opens. So these drivers are going to be pushing as hard as they can. And then arguably, in the case of the sporting and the pro combinations, it's the pros that are getting in. They are not allowed to start the race. They can only get in for the second part of the pit stop race. So out of Sterling's down the straight and about to chalk another lap into the book, all of the time while Simon Orange is disappearing up the road from this train of cars being headed by Ben Dimmock in the Radical. Lucky Kira hasn't as yet shaken away the Brabham that sits behind him. So Lucky Kira running in 8th position overall and leading Group GTC at the moment. And in fact, in terms of championship points, if I've got the points right, Lucky Kira is on 121 points coming into this race after his success earlier on. Ben Dimmock and Steve Burgess, who share the Radical that's at the sharp end, are on 125, leading the championship just 4 points. And that's largely because Lucky Kira in Group GTC, there's enough entrants in his class for him to claim full championship points, 25 for the win. Whereas for the Radical, there's lesser entrants in GTO this weekend, so even if they win the group, they don't score 25, they can only score 18. So back down towards Hawthorn again. The gap's not particularly changing. If anything, Ian Campbell now at the wheel of the white and yellow and black McLaren, the Greystone GT prep car, is falling into the clutches a little bit more of the two Mercedes that lie behind. Thought there was an opportunity there also for Morgan Tilbrook to maybe squeeze his way through it ahead of Ben Dimmock, but not happening. But then Dimmock runs wide at the next corner, and through goes Morgan Tilbrook, ran wide coming out of Sheen Curve, gets back on the tarmac before Stirling's. That was all the opportunity that Morgan Tilbrook needed. So now it's a McLaren 1-2. Down to third goes the Radical, but it does still lead its group, so it is on for maximum points still. And Ben Dimmock, I think now maybe realising he doesn't need to get involved with the GT3 cars. He's got his indicator going, but I think that was maybe he caught it whilst he was twirling his elbows, trying to get the car back under his control as a result of that moment up there at Sheen Curve. And towards the braking area, Ian Logie tries to go up the inside of the McLaren of Ian Campbell, but the number 23 McLaren having none of it. Ian, he's been a class winner in the Gulf 12 Hours before as Ian Campbell, whereas the car behind, the number 16 car in the hands of Ian Logie, he was the Blancpain Endurance Sprint Series champion in the amateur class back in, what, 2015, I think it was, he secured that. Now, Logie also coming into pressure from Mike Price, that light green car. Now, these are the two Ram Racing Mercedes. The one thing they won't want to do is take each other out. Mike, we saw in the GT Cup last year. He had competed in the Porsche Sprint Challenge the year before. Driver who has been partnered up with Callum McLeod for a good number of years now. They've had some reasonable success together, as has this man here, Paul Bailey, and Lucky Kira at the wheel of the black Ferrari. He was the Ferrari Challenge champion back in 2020. The driver of the car ahead, which is the Brabham, Paul Bailey, he's been a multiple GT Cup champion in the past, won Group GTO last year. He's a former Group GTC champion back in 2016 and 2018. He won Group GTO back in 2015 as well, did Paul Bailey. It's good to see this Brabham out, because it was the McLaren MP412C Can-Am that he brought out at Donington Park whilst he was waiting for the new engine to be installed in that Brabham. Now, Ian Campbell has not shaken away Ian Logie, the battle of the two Ians. Mike Price still not that far away in their Pirelli wheel tracks. But this is still the fight for what is in reality third, fourth and fifth and sixth positions at this stage, as they descend downhill and in towards the left-hander at Graham Hill Bend. Radical, McLaren, Mercedes. And with the Radical at the front of the queue, it still continues to lead Group GTO, and even if the three cars behind get past, it will still continue to lead Group GTO. That's because both Ian Campbell, Ian Logie and Mike Price are all in GT3 homologated cars, so they are in a different group. Now we're starting to get the back markers come involved now as well, so this could be a pivotal part of the lap and may well be the catalyst for a bit of change here with this battle. That is Ron Trenker, the American, who moves well and truly out of harm's way, doesn't want to get involved at the wheel of his Greystone GT McLaren. The next of the cars that they're going to come up against is going to be one of the Orange Racing powered by JMH McLarens, which will be Patrick Collins. He sees them coming and moves to the left to stay well and truly out of harm's way. Sensible driving from the drivers, good use of the headlamps from the front runners, and fantastic use of the blue flags from the marshals. Now, Group GTH at the moment, car number 51 is the Veluga Racing Porsche of Matthew Graham. The car that's directly ahead of it is the sister car to it, the number 50 car, which for this race is in the hands of Sam Mayer-Lachlan, who first started racing, best part of 20 plus years ago in Toyota MR2s of all things, as Sam. But he is at the moment leading the group, but only just, teammate right behind, and just off that is the Group GTB leading BMW, the Saxon Motorsport car in the hands of Tom Barrow, who's made a good return to the championship this weekend. Didn't see much, if anything, of Tom last year, really. Sporadic outings, but that was it. I think we're probably going to see the same from that BMW here, but what are we going to see from the two Porsches ahead, fighting over the lead of the group? And off, I'm afraid, is Callum Jenkins. So that was the Team Hard Racing Ginetta, off on the exit of Sheen and before Stirling's. Tom Barrow nips up the inside of one of the two Veluga cars, which is Matthew Graham's car. So that's one of the cars dealt with. Matthew Graham, who we've seen racing a raft of other things over the course of the last few seasons. He's having his, I think, debut weekend in the GT Cup this weekend. He's very much a late call-up. Looks like Callum Jenkins' car is stricken there, and that is not ideal. Look at the position of the rear wheel. That has made contact with the barriers, and that left rear suspension is broken. A quick look, yeah, he spins the car. Watch the left rear, it's going to make contact with the barrier. Oh, hefty contact with the barrier. So that is a car which is stricken there. The marshals are not going to be able to push that out of harm's way, and that is very much in the firing line, because quite often what happens up there at Sheen Curve is that cars run wide and then fire themselves from the left of the circuit back to the right, so that is not in a safe place. So it wouldn't surprise me if we saw the safety car come out. For the moment, though, it's being covered by localised yellow flags. We've still got this great fight going on for 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th position. The order hasn't changed at all. Still Ben Dimmock in the Radical. Just up the road is a bit more traffic now, and it's not particularly a slow car. It's the Group GTB mid-engined or rear-engined BMW in the hands of Sam Alpass, which is quick in a straight line. Is the Radical going to squeeze its way through a pass? Yes, it is, I think. So Ben Dimmock draws the Radical alongside the Group GTB BMW, and then the door is left open to allow Ian Campbell to sneak through. Ian Loggy will have to wait until the exit of the corner to propel the Ram Racing Mercedes through. He dives through down the Derek Minter straight before they get towards Westfield Bend, and on the exit of it is where we finally see Mike Price go through. And a change for the lead of Group GTH by the look of things. Great move, diving through. Matthew Graham picks up the lead of Group GTH at the wheel of the number 51 for Luger Racing Porsche. Down to second is the sister car of Sam Mayer-Lochnam, but that is still for the lead of the group, running in 13th and 14th positions overall. Ben Dimmock has also lost a position there. He's dropped outside of the top 3 overall. Through has got Ian Campbell, but we know the Radical is quick in a straight line. He thought about it, but Ian Campbell covered off the move. So Ben Dimmock opted to keep his powder dry. So it's Campbell in 3rd, Ben Dimmock in 4th, 2 Mercedes 5th and 6th respectively, still being Ian Loggy all the time with the light green car of his teammate Mike Price right in his wheel tracks. Now, is Ian Loggy going to try anything down at Graham Hill Bend? No, opts not to. Make sure that he gets cleanly off the corner, because you've got the Cooper Straight coming up. We know that Radical is indecently quick in a straight line. Now, Ben Dimmock should be able to keep that Radical ahead of the Mercedes. There's almost a touch between the pair of them as they head down through Pilgrim's Drop and up towards Hawthorne. That's the part of the circuit that really favours the more powerful Radical. Here's a quick replay of how Ben Dimmock lost the lead of the race, and it really was a fantastic move up the inside from Ian Campbell. Left his braking as late as he could in towards Clark Curve, and Ben Dimmock had to leave the door open. He now has to leave the door open again as they head up towards Sheen Curve. Through goes Ian Loggy. That's in towards the localised yellow flag zone. Hopefully he got the move done before they got to the yellow flags. It's also just traffic up the road as well that we'll need dealing with before too much longer. So a couple of places lost for Ben Dimmock, one to Ian Campbell, one to the other Ian Loggy. Pressure doesn't stop there though, because he's now got Mike Price breathing down his neck. They also need to try and deal with Phil Carter's Greystone McLaren, which moves out of the way whilst they place a lap on it. And we are also now the best part of just 6 minutes away really from the pit window opening for the first batch of cars. Remember, it's the car squads front of the race that will pit first today, so those in Group GTO, Group GT3, Group GTC, they're the first group of cars to pit today, and that's between the 24th and the 29th minute of the race. Group GTB and Group GTH will have to wait a further 5 minutes before they come into the pit lane, but that's changed for tomorrow. They swap round and the others pit first tomorrow. So Marshall's being kept busy, ensuring that they wave the blue flags and let everybody know what's happening. Ben Dimmock gets bumped by Mike Price onto the grass there. That loses him a further place, but still keeps him in the lead of Group GTO. The car that was in second place going to find itself down towards the bottom of the top 6 at the end of this lap. Let's just have another quick look, another quick replay. They were side by side coming out of the corner. Yeah, and I think there was just a little bit of contact between the pair of them, or Ben Dimmock maybe tried to avoid the contact. Either way, he's lost the position, which is frustrating for him, but still hangs on to the lead of the group as they pass the localised yellows, where Team Hard, Callum Jenkins, Ginetta is still in the process of being recovered. More traffic to deal with. Make Happen Mercedes is the next of those that needs ticking off. And after that, it doesn't stop there, because I think the Caffeine 6 by Par Motorsport, Tim Kresick, Porsche Cayman is just up the road as the next of those that needs dealing with. And as soon as they deal with that, they're up to the next of the cars again, which is the number 25 Paddock Motorsport car, which is going to be Kavi Jundu in his second weekend of racing. Kavi hasn't done any motorsport before, hasn't even done any karting before, Kavi Jundu, and had mixed fortunes. The man from the West Midlands who owns his own packaging company in the first weekend of racing at Donington Park. Talking of packaging companies, that was how Ian Loggy was hugely successful in business. He sits there still looking to try and put the Greystone GT Ian Campbell, McLaren under pressure. Now, whilst all of this has been going on behind in all of the squabbles, Simon Orange has opened up a very comfortable, nearly 8-second lead in the lead of this race. Still another 4 minutes before the pit window opens. Third and fourth together-ish. Ian Loggy lost a little bit of time through the traffic at the wheel of the Ram Racing Mercedes, so he needs to try and catch back up again onto the coattails of Ian Campbell. The man from Sandhurst, 49 years of age now, Ian. Ian Loggy trying to hunt him down behind. Ian Loggy is knocking on the door of 60 now. Still as quick as ever, though. Hugely huge fit as well. There's huge amounts of fitness to try and ensure that he's able to deal with what is a very busy season for him. Something like 70 or 80 races he's scheduled to compete in over the course of the 2022 season. And he did a lot of racing over the winter. Was out in the Middle East for a huge chunk of the winter, racing in the Middle Eastern Radical Championship. We saw him race in the Gulf 12 Hours. He's got British GT, he's got GT Cup. He really does have a huge amount of seat time over the course of the 2022 season. But at the moment, Ian Campbell is not showing him a clean pair of heels, but just seems to have the upper hand, that McLaren. It's got back marker between himself and the chasing Mercedes. That back marker is Adrian Watts, the number 42 Porsche, which is passed now by Ian Loggy. But as soon as he gets past that, there's more traffic again to deal with. The next of those is going to be Alex Stevenson at the wheel of the V8 engine Ginetta G56. Fantastic sounding car, the introduction of the new G56. And then he gets past that, and then the next of the cars then that he needs to deal with is number 26, Timo Shaham, Paddock Motorsport McLaren, which is picked off fairly easily down the Derek Minter Straight. The pit window will be opening very shortly, and on the basis of it's largely quicker drivers for most of the cars getting in, they will surely pit right at the front end of the window, one would have thought. Ian Loggy, however, is driving solo at the wheel of that number 16 car, so whilst he will stop for a shorter period of time because he's not sharing with a pro, it is then going to be the pros that are going to be ganging up against him in part two of the race. And we're now only, what, a couple of minutes away, so they can't pit this lap that they will just be completing. So they're just about to start this one. They won't be able to pit at the end of this one. It will be the one thereafter where we might start to see the pit lane slowly fill up. I think it will be quickly fill up with a raft of cars changing. I think at the sharp end, those that might stay out a bit longer, Ian Loggy might because he's driving solo. And the other car that I think might stay out a bit longer is that white Radical there in the hands of Ben Dimmock, who almost made contact with the GT4 McLaren. Now, I think there was just a brief touch between himself and Timo Shaham as they went up towards Druids. So Ben Dimmock almost caught out by a little bit of traffic there. Deals with it, though, as they head along the Cooper Straight. So as we head into the pit window, Simon Orange leads, Morgan Tilbrook second, Ian Loggy there in... Ian Campbell there in third place, Ian Loggy in fourth place. Fifth place is Mike Price, and sixth place is Ben Dimmock. Ben Dimmock is the first non-GT3 car we've got in the field, that white Radical. He leads Group GTO. Quick replay here. This is going to be Roy Millington running very wide at the wheel of the Ferrari, but watch in the background for the contact. Yeah, definitely contact. You can see the Radical got into the rear quarter of the McLaren. Don't think it caused damage to either, but that was a lucky moment really there. Almost caught out through the traffic was Ben, who again has been a very successful driver over the years, was the Radical Challenge champion back in 2015. He won the Mini Challenge, the Open class, back in 2017. Was a fierce competitor in Radicals with Steve Burgess, who he now shares the car with. They were absolute rivals on track a few seasons ago, but have teamed up and are back for season number 2 in the GT Cup Championship at the wheel of this beautiful looking Radical prepared by Rob Weldon's team, Raw Motorsport. Now the next of the cars it's going to have to deal with is going to be one of the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghinis. Deals with the Lamborghini Huracan, which is Charlotte Birch, without too much trouble. Now, I think at the end of this lap, we might see this car come in. This is the race leader. Simon Orange has now built up a almost 12-second lead between himself and Morgan Tilbrook. And, well, Simon Orange will stop for 10 seconds longer than the Enduro Motorsport McLaren will stop. So he's almost done enough now to be able to, hopefully, put that car back ahead of the car that's in second place in this race. But where he comes out relative to Ian Loggy, who is stopping for 25 seconds less than this race leader, remains to be seen. So are we going to see Simon Orange come in? The pit window is open. Yes, instantly Simon Orange comes in, ready to hand the car over to Michael O'Brien. So that is the first of the cars to dive for the pit lane. But I think all of those that are AMs sharing with pros are all hugely likely to be into the pit lane at the end of this lap. You see Morgan Tilbrook is in, ready to hand the car over to former British GT champion Marcus Clutton. They'll park at 45 degrees, such is the busy Brands Hatch pit lane this weekend. And then the teams will have to push the cars back into the service lane before they can then get back out. So Simon Orange out of the car. Ian Campbell is in to hand over to Ollie Webb, who we've seen lots of in the World Endurance Championship over the last few years. Ian Loggy is in, which surprises me. I thought he might stay out a bit longer. Mike Price is in to hand over to the pro, Callum McLeod. And the Radical is in as well, which also does surprise me, which is going to be Steve Burgess to take over that. I saw in the background John Dillon come in. He'll hand over to Lamborghini factory driver Andrea Amici. So, as expected, right at the front end of the pit window, everybody diving in. Out comes the seat insert, the number 11 car. Callum McLeod jumps in. There's the 61 Lamborghini. John Dillon getting out. Andrea Amici getting in. Number 67 car, which was in the hands of Simon Orange. Door is about to close and Michael O'Brien will jump on board. Michael, who finished 4th in the British GT Championship back in 2020 in the GT4 class. He was also 3rd in British GT4 class back in 2018 as well. For the lead of Group GTH, though, they've got a few more laps to continue because their pit window doesn't open until there's just 21 minutes remaining. So another 3 minutes before the window opens for the GTH and GTB cars, which means that we can thoroughly enjoy what's still going on between Matthew Graham and Sam Mayer-Locknam for the lead of the group. Down pit road goes Ian Loggy. So Ian Loggy has jumped Michael O'Brien in the pit stops, which isn't surprising because that McLaren had to stop for 25 seconds longer than the Mercedes that's ahead of it. But of course, Ian Loggy is, no disrespect to him, but he's an amateur driver. You know, he doesn't make his living through motorsport. He's a very, very quick absolutely. And he's not going to make it easy for Michael O'Brien to work his way through. But the problem is that Ian Loggy is now going to get ganged up on by the pros. So Michael O'Brien looking to try and thread the McLaren through. He gets a slightly better run heading down the Cooper Straight. The door is open. Michael O'Brien goes through. That's not going to be for the lead, remember, because the cars haven't pitted just as yet. But by the time we've cycled through the pit stop, that could be a very important overtake there for Michael O'Brien. And we're now only a couple of minutes away from seeing the pit window open for the other batch of cars. Leading the race at the moment, it's one of the Top Cats Racing with Hex.com Lamborghinis of Warren Gilbert. And second in the race is another Lamborghini. That will be the number 13 James Webb-driven car at this stage. And the Group GTB leader is third at the moment, which is Tom Barrow in the Beamer. So Michael O'Brien now dealing with those cars that are squabbling away for the lead of Group GTH. The two Porsche Caymans will not be able to pit just as yet. It's another just under 90 seconds before their pit window opens, so they'll be able to pit at the end of the lap that they are just about to start. So Michael O'Brien pushing hard now, trying to build an advantage between himself and Marcus Clutton now, who has taken over the Enduro Motorsport number 66 car. He sides his way through the traffic. Now, Ian Loggy, who stopped for a shorter period of time at the wheel of that Mercedes, is ultimately sitting now behind the two McLarens that have already both picked him off. I said he'd get ganged up on by the pros. Such a shame that we haven't got the Nearies in their Mercedes this weekend. If you're wondering where they are, well, Richard's been suffering with a back issue and he attempted to qualify the car, was off the pace, was in way too much pain, so they've withdrawn the car for this weekend. That's why they are not out. And if you're wondering where Steve Rushton and John Whitehouse are, well, they blew their engine up in their McLaren GT3 car at the beginning of the weekend, so they are out for the weekend as well, I'm afraid. Now, traffic still to deal with. Tom Barrow's Saxon Motorsport Beamer moves out of harm's way. He's running second in the race at the moment, but remember, the pit window has only just opened for him, so he can, at the end of this lap, come into the pit lane, and then the order will start to get itself in some sort of resemblance to what the finishing order could be. So are we going to see Tom Barrow work his way into the pit lane? So he's running second in the race at this stage, leading Group GTB. He will drive solo. There'll be nobody that will take over the car. And are we going to see either of these Group GTH Porsches come in as well? The two Veluga teammates who've been pretty much inseparable. Well, the 51 stays out, so that is going to be Matthew Graham stays out, but Sam Mayer-Locknam is into the pit lane at the wheel of the sister car. So this is going to be James Wallace, driver that is fresh out of Fiesta Juniors and having raced in the Junior Saloon Car Cup for the last couple of years, Junior Saloon Car Championship. He will jump on board it. Also into the pit lane comes Patrick Collins at the wheel of the number 17 car, ready to hand over to, I think it's Will Dendy he's sharing with for this race. But for Michael O'Brien, he'll be now looking to try and take up the overall race lead and see whether he can start to open up a similar gap to Simon Orange did in part one of the race. So it is this number 67 McLaren that leads overall now. Up to second has come the number 66 car of Marcus Clutton, having taken over from Morgan Tilbrook. Both of those cars already having a win so far this year. Into the pit lane comes 77, that's Mark Hopton, ready to hand over to pro driver Ewan Hankey, who is one of the McLaren development drivers. In comes the American driver Ron Trenker as well at the wheel of the white and red car, one of the many Greystone prepared cars we've got in the field. He's got John Lancaster about to take over that car as well. Former European Le Mans Series P2 champion from some years ago. So both of the Paddock Motorsport McLarens are in, down towards the bottom left-hand corner of your screen as well. So that will be Timo Shahan being taken over by Tom Roach, who we've seen racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup GB and former Mazda MX-5 champion. And the 25 car, Kavi Chundi, now being taken over not by Adam Hatfield, who's feeling a bit under the weather. Hope you're feeling better soon, Adam. But Mo Ritson, who raced in the championship last year and is racing in British GT this year, is back on driving duties this weekend. He wasn't expecting it, but he'd got his kit with him and has stepped into the breach as such. So pit lane not exactly full with cars that run in Group GTB, Group GTH, because they're not all necessarily stopping on the same lap. There's still another, 3.5 minutes of their pit window to serve. So the 78 rather being pushed back. That is Jordan Albert now that will have taken over that car. Former British GT racer, and we saw Jordan racing single-seaters in what is nowadays called GB3. Back at the time he was racing it, it was called the BRDC Formula 4 Championship. So Jordan takes over that car. Tom Roach is out of the pit lane. There goes Ewan Hankey. Watch out for Ewan. Certainly a driver that could close his eyes probably and drive this McLaren around Brands. Actually knows the circuit well. He knows the car absolutely inside out. And also the number 42 car of Adrian Watt, former Radical racer. Nice to see him in the championship for this weekend. So we've got 18 minutes to go. Still, any of the cars that haven't pitted yet can still take the opportunity to do so. And one of those that hasn't, I think, is the number 69 Make Happen Racing Mercedes in the hands of Stephen Walton. That car is running 7th place at the moment, but is still as yet to pit. So that's why it's up 22 places. And I think the sister cars, you can see 11th on your screen there, John Curry, is up 17 places and hasn't pitted. And also down in 18th position, Jason Garrett, at the wheel of the BMW, has yet to pit as well. So there's 2 or 3 cars that are leaving it until the tail end of the window to come in. But the regulations state that the pit window closes with 15 minutes remaining. You have to serve your pit stop between the 29th and the 35th minute of the race in the first pit stop race of the weekend if you're in Group GTB or Group GTH. So that's why that car there is running in 8th position. So Marcus Clutton pushing hard, trying to catch the dark blue and orange Michael O'Brien driven McLaren that lies ahead. Both of the 720S's pushing hard, the pro drivers fresh behind the wheel. Marcus Clutton has been driving and coaching Morgan Tilbrook for a couple of seasons now, which has seen Morgan's driving come on beautifully well, I've got to say. Can the former British GT champion, double former British GT champion, we ought to say Marcus Clutton, close the gap? He won the GT4 category back in 2011 and won the Supersport category a couple of years prior to that when it existed. Now, Michael O'Brien's got a bit of traffic to deal with here. I think that was Mo Ritson's car that he's just squeezed his way through and past. It was just through Graham Hill Bend. He's heading up towards the braking area for Surtees now with more traffic to deal with, which is going to be Jensen Lund's Top Cats Racing Lamborghini. For Marcus Clutton, he's still dealing with the Paddock Motorsport McLaren, which thankfully he caught as they headed onto the straight. Now this car hasn't pitted yet. Pit window is about to close in 45 seconds time, so it has to come into the pits at the end of this lap. Otherwise, it will be too late, I'm afraid. It will pit outside of the window, so onto the brakes. Looks as though the car is destined for the pit lane, so sensible stuff there. Into the pit lane comes the number 69 car. So that is finally Stephen Walton giving way his driving duties, handing over to Chris Hart. sister car is also in, which is John Curry, who will stay behind the wheel. And also the BMW is in, Tom Barrow. Now that looks like a retirement, I'm afraid, for Tom. You can see him to the front of the car with the overalls around the waist, and that was the car that was leading Group GTB. So we'll have to pick up on who picks up on the lead of Group GTB. And into the pit lane, I also saw Marcus Clutton there. Maybe a pit lane infringement, maybe the stop was too short. That might be the problem. But that car that was in second place, heading down the pit lane, I'm afraid to say. So that must have been some sort of drive-through penalty, I can only imagine, for Marcus Clutton. So that now means that it's going to be the Bram Racing Callum McLeod Mercedes that was driven so well by Mike Price in the early stages of this race, the light green car that should be up into second position now. Final few cars just finishing off their pit stop, so certainly the lead of Group GTH we should be able to pick up on before too much longer, once they've all settled down again. This car leads Group GTO still. That's one thing we can absolutely be safely assured of. In the hands now of Steve Burgess. Ian Lockie at the wheel of the number 16 Ram Racing Mercedes is down to 4th in the race. Which must mean that Steve Burgess is now up into 5th of the race, which begs the question, what's happened to Ian Campbell on that lap as well? No such worries about who's leading. 14 minutes to go. Michael O'Brien, Orange Racing powered by JMH. The McLaren safely on its way. Another lap chalked into the book. Out of the pit lane comes one of the last little stragglers, which is going to be Chris Hart. Now has taken over that number 69 car. So we should be able to see where that feeds back out relative to the rest of the Group GTH competitors and work out what's going on for the lead of Group GTH. It was the Faluga Porsches, wasn't it, before the pit stops? So there's Callum McLeod. He's in second place now, but is 20 seconds adrift of the race leading McLaren. So fairly lonely position for him. Marcus Clutton is 3rd, following the drive-through penalty at the wheel of his McLaren. Must have been, I can only assume, a pit stop that was a little bit too short. They had no success seconds to serve. It was just a 75-second stop for them, which is what a sporting and a pro driver combination have to serve. So whether they miscalculated or maybe the car sped in the pit lane, I simply don't know. But that's undone some of the hard work that's been done in the early part of the race by Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton. But they are still in the podium spots, that's the good thing. And potentially, if they stay where they are, on for 15 championship points at the wheel of the 720S McLaren. Now there's number 80, that's John Lancaster, who's now taken over the 33-year-old, and he is hounding one of the Paddock Motorsport McLarens, which looks like it's the number 25 car, whilst Marcus Clutton is trying to squeeze his way past both of them. So that'll be Tom Roach in the number 25 car now. Mazda MX-5 champion back in 2009. He was runner-up in the Super Cup twice, actually, for the Mark III cars in 2014 and 2017 was Tom as well. Runs his own Supercar Experience Day company nowadays, Car Chase Heroes. So he's been placed a lap down. And every time now on such a busy circuit with, what, 36 cars was it attempted to qualify, every time you get past one car, there's another one that you need to deal with. Adrian Watt's Porsche coming under pressure. The car that sits behind brakes very late. Jensen Lund, nice to see Jensen back racing with us after illness last year. He's, I gather, slowly getting there. But he moves out of the way, having just lapped one car. He needs to move out of the way so that he's lapped himself by the charging Enduro Motorsport McLaren in the hands of Marcus Clutton. Now, what is the gap doing? Marcus Clutton last time through, yeah, a little bit slower through sector 1 on this lap, which isn't surprising because he had traffic to deal with. Simon Orange is still 23 seconds up the road. So Simon Orange, Michael O'Brien rather, is 23 seconds up the road from Marcus Clutton. There's always traffic to deal with. So GT3 McLaren passes GT4 McLaren, 720 past 570S. That's Ewan Hankey moving out of the way. And Michael O'Brien is pushing hard because sector 3 for Michael O'Brien last time through was purple, the quickest final sector of the lap that anybody has done so far. So he's really pushing hard, is Michael O'Brien. Through comes Marcus Clutton over the start-finish line, and the lead advantage is 24.8 seconds. 24.8 seconds. That's what we need to try and keep an eye on. That's the gap first to second with 10 minutes to go. It's going to ebb and flow through the traffic. And with pros behind the wheel, the difficulty is if you chip away, yet you might, on pure pace with clear laps and identical conditions for both, you might take 0.1, 0.2 out of it. Traffic is going to have the pivotal role to play in this race, I think. If Marcus Clutton is to catch the car of Michael O'Brien, it will all come down to traffic. Callum McLeod down to 4th place. He must have had a drive-through penalty as well, because he's dropped down through the order at the wheel of the Ram Racing Mercedes. Still ahead of the sister car, though, of Ian Logie, that sits a place further back from him in the order currently. Traffic to deal with. That will be Sasha Kakad's E46 M3. It's now been taken over by him from Jason Garrett, who started the car. Now for Michael O'Brien, more traffic again just up the road. That will be, again, GT3 Mercedes passing GT4 Mercedes. There's Ian Logie, who is the next position back in the race, in 5th place. You can just see the Radical as well going through as well, which is Steve Burgess, who is in 6th place and still leads Group GTO, by the way. So out of Stirling's, build the speed again as you accelerate up through the gears in towards Clearways and then Clark Curve, whilst Michael O'Brien is already safely making his way down towards Hawthorne, the race leader, about to place a lap on Benny Simonson, a driver of huge amounts of experience, having raced in WEC and British GT as well in the past. Benny, we've seen him out in the Blancpain Series, or World GT Challenge as it's called nowadays. So just moving the Ferrari out of harm's way, allowing the race leader to go through, and then the next of the cars to deal with is going to be the Group GTH leading car. So that's the number 50 car now that's placed a lap down, which is going to be James Wallace behind the wheel. James, hugely impressive at Donington Park in that car, and is on, I would say, for another stellar weekend, really. That car claimed a group win in Group GTH at Donington Park. It finished 2nd in its group in the other 2 out of the 3 races. So it was a really solid weekend for them. They lead Group GTH Championship standings after the first weekend of racing. Ollie Webb still in the process of back marker lappery, having taken over that car. Now, somebody was running wide there. That looked like that was up at Westfield Bend, where somebody had raised the dust. Couldn't quite pick out who it was that had skittered off the circuit, was just in the process of rejoining. Ollie Webb pushing hard. The lead advantage that was 24.8 seconds comes down to 23.2. Ollie Webb sitting there in 3rd place. What's the relative gap between himself and Morgan Tilbrook? It's 18.9. So they're a bit strung out 1st to 2nd and 2nd to 3rd. Ollie Webb just in the process of sneaking up the inside of Ewan Hankey. And then all through the gravel trap, that is Lucky Kira right the way through the gravel trap at Paddock Hill Bend. Just about avoids the Ferrari stopping in the gravel or clonking the barriers, but those tyres are going to be very dusty now. The car's very dusty. The brake discs and the brake ducts are going to be full of gravel. Just have a quick look. The car just didn't really turn in, didn't rotate as much as he wanted it to. Just sort of skittered off the road. Everybody else carrying on. You could just see the plume of dust as he just avoids the barriers. Look how far he went into the gravel trap and keeps his foot in, does the former Ferrari Challenge champion in the UK. And Lucky was definitely lucky there, wasn't he? And will he continue to lead the group? No, he had just lost the lead of the group to Warren Gilbert and Jensen Lund's number 9 Lamborghini. Jensen will be behind the wheel, so Lucky Kira probably outside of the top 10 now, I would have thought, following that moment. Bouncing over the curbs goes Tom Roach. There goes Ian Logie up towards Sheen Curve. More traffic to deal with, which is going to be Adrian Watt's Porsche. Porsche doesn't move out of the way just when Ian Logie wanted it to, so that allows Steve Burgess to begin to close in at the wheel of the Radical. One of the rear lights just dangling on the left-hand side of that Radical as it is just clinging on by the wires. Now, in a straight line, we know the Radical is quick. This is for 5th and 6th place overall. Group GTO Radical past Group GT3 Mercedes. And Ian Logie realising the Radical is quicker. It can go past. It's not going to take any championship points off him. and he's 10 seconds down the road from the next of the cars in his class anyway, which with 5 minutes to go is not an insurmountable amount, but it's not really stacked in your favour, is it? So think about the championship points here, and he's been around long enough to know that it's only the 6th round of the season. There are 26 races to go throughout the course of the 2022 season in GT Cup, so another 20 races after this one. He's still fighting back, though. If he can take the place away, maybe I've changed my opinion there. Maybe he's flashing his lights. He wants to try and get through, but it's the straight lines where the Radical just has so much more speed, being a Group GTO car. Now, for Group GTH, we've still got at this stage the Porsche leading, but this Porsche here is coming under pressure now. Chris Diamond has taken over the wheel of the Par Motorsport Porsche. To give it its full title, the Caffeine 6 by Par Motorsport Porsche, and the number 14 McLaren that was started by Phil Carter has now got the pro driver Mike Broadhurst behind the wheel. They are having a squabble, Porsche from McLaren, but keep an eye on what's just behind them as well, because that's the Ginetta of James Kellett rather, and off and in the gravel, and that is not in an ideal position, is, I'm afraid to say, Adrian, well, let's just have a quick look at the car. 2 wheels on the grass, I'm afraid, going in towards Stirling's Bend, squeal of tyres, and Porsche deposits its rear wheels into the gravel trap. It's going to go nowhere, and it's right at the edge of the circuit with 4 minutes to go, which, again, I think begs a bit of a question, I'm afraid. So, I think we're going to have at least a safety car, but with that car where it is, and 75% of the race having gone, it may well be that they decide to throw the checkered flag early or possibly stop the race and declare the result. We'll have to wait and see. Michael O'Brien, though, what he'll be doing in the meantime is just pushing on in the lead of the race. That's all he can do. Simon Orange's stint was a mega one to put that car in a strong position for part 2 of the race. He overcame the extra success seconds that they had to serve compared to other competitors, and as a result of the hard work that he did in part number 1, it allowed Michael O'Brien to take the car over in a good position in part number 2, and there is what I thought would happen. The red flag has indeed come out, so we are past 75% distance in the race with the stricken Porsche of Adrian Watt in the gravel trap at Stirling's. Even if we went safety car to get that car out of harm's way, well, the clock would tick to 0 and we'd finish under safety car anyway, so throw the checkered flag that little bit earlier. It means that the race, whilst it's being stopped slightly earlier, is going to mean that all of the cars, thankfully, are going to be able to hopefully take part tomorrow. I don't think we've seen too many damaged cars at all, but everybody, I'm sure, will be ushered towards the pit lane by the marshals, and we are not likely to see any sort of rerun of that period of the race, which means that that car there, the number 67 machine, the orange powered by JMH McLaren of Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien, subject to official confirmation, looking as though they are going to be the winners of round 6 of the 2022 GT Cup Championship. That for them will be their 2nd win of the season, because they did claim a win in the 3rd of the 4 races at Donington Park. So all the rest of the cars filing their way down the pit lane. The GT Cup Championship competitors are assembled in the outer paddock for this weekend, because the fact that they are supporting the GT World Challenge Europe, so the cars usually when they visit Brands Hatch would be in the pit lane and have the garages, but they're all in the outer paddock for this weekend, and will make their way towards the outer paddock, where they'll remain in Parc Fermé for a period of time, and then they'll be released and the results will be confirmed. Bit of clearing up to do as well. The Callum Jenkins Ginetta is still needing to be sorted, but that car there is the winning car. 2 wins this season. That is the only car that has won 2 overall races so far this season. So we had 5 different winners out of the first 5 races. We've still got 5 different winners. So we should see the cars making their way down the pit lane. Hopefully we'll be able to confirm the results for you soon, and have a look at some of the highlights as well from the race we've just seen as well. So let's look at the highlights. It was going to be Simon Orange and Morgan Tilbrook on the front row of the grid, and when the lights went out, the 2 McLarens were pretty much together. The light green Mercedes, though, of Mike Price was a little bit slow away and was coming under pressure from Lucky Kira through turn number 1. Good battles down through the order as Sam Alpass at the wheel of his unique BMW was looking to try and make progress, but there was contact in the early stages, and getting turned around was the JMH McLaren of Patrick Collins. The lead battle in Group GTB was a great one between the two BMWs until Sam Alpass made a mistake and spun his BMW as he went round through Stirling's. But for the Radical in the hands of Ben Dimmock, he was managing to keep his car well and truly ahead of a raft of Ginetta GT3s. A spin at Sheen Curve into the barriers for car number 10 and out of the race for Callum Jenkins. And there was also a great battle for the lead of Group GTH, the two Voluga Motorsport teammates going at it tooth and nail. A great move from Ian Campbell saw him sneak up the inside of Ben Dimmock's car, which then lost further places to Ian Logie and to Mike Price as well, but it still continued to lead Group GTH. For Ben Dimmock, though, almost he got caught out with a little bit of traffic as they were heading up in towards Druid. Slight contact between himself and a GT4 McLaren. The pit window opened for those cars in Group GTO, Group GT3 and Group GTC. As expected, they all pitted at the sharp end of the window, and it would be Ian Logie, who had less time to serve in the pit lane, that would be picking up the lead of the race. But he was soon passed by the pro, Michael O'Brien, who brought the McLaren back in to what would ultimately be the lead of the race and on to a win. Morgan Tilbrook had vacated the number 66 McLaren and handed it over to Marcus Clutter, but that car would have to serve a drive-through penalty as a result of a pit lane infringement. There was then a rather gravelly moment for Lucky Khera at Paddock Hill Bend, right the way into the deepest part of the gravel trap, but he still managed to haul the Ferrari out of harm's way. A spin in the latter stages, though, for Adrian Watton into the gravel trap at Stirling's would not bring out the safety car. With 3 minutes to go, a red flag was given, so it was the car number 66 of Michael O'Brien that took the win. So it's the Orange Racing, powered by JMH McLaren, of Simon Orange and Michael O'Brien that claimed the win, from Morgan Tilbrook and Marcus Clutton, who were second, Ian Campbell and Ollie Webb third, ahead of Mike Price and Callum McLeod. Steve Burgess and Ben Dimmock in fifth place won Group GTO, ahead of Ian Logie, who was there in sixth place, John Dillon and Andrea Amici. Jensen Lunn and Warren Gilbert would have been the winners of Group GTC in 8th position. Alex Stevenson and James Kellett were 9th, with the Webbs there in 10th position. The win in Group GTH went to the car that finished in 12th position, which was going to be the number 50 Voluga Motorsport Porsche of James Wallace and Sam Meyer-Lochner. And you can see there all the rest of those finishers, including those cars that had problems and retired. So everybody from Adrian Watts backwards in 25th all encountered problems of some sort of description throughout the course of what was a really, really busy but thoroughly enjoyable pit stop race here at Brands Hatch. And that is the end of day number 1. We will do it all again tomorrow as well. We've got both a sprint race and a pit stop race to bring to you, day 2 here at Brands Hatch. But from everybody here down here at Brands Hatch and the whole production team, thanks for watching today. Until tomorrow, goodbye.